Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're looking into the really extraordinary life of Maria Branyas Morera. For a while there, she was actually the world's oldest person.
Quite a title to hold.
It really is. And we've gathered, quite a bit of material about her. Biographical stuff, family history, her lifestyle, even the science done on her later in life, and importantly, her own thoughts. Our goal really is to try and understand what contributed to such an exceptionally long life, and such an insightful one, too.
It's a fascinating case study for sure.
So if you've ever wondered about, the secrets to living a long, healthy life, or how genetics and lifestyle kind of play off each other, or maybe you just love a compelling human story that stretches over a century, well, this deep dive is definitely for you.
Absolutely. We'll be digging into the key parts of her, 117 years?
117 years. Incredible. We'll try to pull out the most interesting nuggets.
It's a remarkable story, no doubt. And the information we have paints this picture of a life lived through huge historical shifts. It gives us a pretty unique perspective on longevity.
Okay, let's jump right in then, back to the very beginning. Maria was born in 1907. I mean, just think about that year for a second.
It really sets the scene, doesn't it? March 4th, 1907. And interestingly, in San Francisco, California.
Right, California, so she had dual nationality, Spanish and U.S.
Exactly. Her parents were Spanish. They'd moved from Mexico to the U.S. just the year before she was born. Her father, Joseph Branyas Julia, was a journalist.
A journalist.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Any connection to her later sort of digital life on Twitter, do you think?
Maybe indirectly. More immediately, the family moved around a bit. San Francisco, then Texas, then New Orleans. And it was in New Orleans that her father actually founded a Spanish language magazine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, called Mercurio. So you can see this thread of, well, communication and connection to the Spanish-speaking world right from the start.
So roots in both America and Europe. But then the family decided to head back to Catalonia.
Yes, around 1915. There were a couple of reasons. Her father's health wasn't good. He had tuberculosis. And they were facing some financial difficulties, too. Doctors actually recommended going back to Catalonia for his health.
Okay, but 1915? That's right in the middle of World War I. The journey must have been something.
Oh, absolutely perilous. They couldn't just sail straight across the Atlantic because of the German naval presence. They had to take this really roundabout route via Cuba and the Azores.
Wow.
And Maria was only, 7 or 8 years old at the time? Imagine that for a kid. Wartime travel, that uncertainty.
It's hard to even picture. And sadly, that journey brought a really significant loss for the family.
Tragically, yes. Her father died from his tuberculosis during the voyage. In 1915, he was only 37.
Oh, that's so young.
It is. He was buried at sea. Some reports say maybe his ashes were scattered off the coast of Galicia. But yeah, losing her father like that, under those circumstances, it must have been incredibly difficult for young Maria.
And wasn't there something else? An accident involving Maria herself on that same trip?
Yes, unfortunately. While she was playing on the ship, she fell. Fell from the upper deck down to the lower deck.
Oh, no.
And the result was permanent. Total hearing loss in one ear. So, right up from these early years, she's facing these major challenges: loss, physical injury, displacement. Adaptability seems key, even then.
It really sounds like resilience was baked in early on. So what happened when they finally made it to Catalonia?
Well, her mother, Teresa Morera Lack, she settled with the children first in Barcelona, but then later they moved to Banyuls in the Girona province.
Okay.
Maria's mother eventually remarried, and Maria ended up with quite a large family, 8 siblings and half-siblings in total.
A big family. And what about her schooling, her interests in Banyuls?
She got her early education there, learned reading, writing. She also got into music and painting. Apparently she had a real love for the piano, even from a young age.
Ah, the piano. That comes up again later, doesn't it?
It certainly does. It stayed with her for, almost her entire life. And the family also had a summer place, a house on the Costa Brava, which turned out to be quite important later on.
Important because that's where she met her husband.
Yeah.
Let's move into that phase, her sort of adult life taking shape in Catalonia.
Exactly right. In 1931, when she was about 23 or 24, Maria married Joan Moret. He was a doctor, a traumatologist, and yes, they met at that family summer home on the Costa Brava.
And they were married for a long time.
A very long time, 45 years, until he passed away in 1976. That's a really long partnership, a solid foundation for her life, you'd imagine.
45 years, yeah, that's significant. And they had a family.
They did. 3 children, 2 daughters, Maria Teresa and Rosa, and a son named August. And the family just kept growing. Sources mention 11 grandchildren and somewhere between 11 and 13 great-grandchildren.
Wow. Just think of the generations she saw.
It's incredible, isn't it, spanning such a huge period of history?
But their life wasn't always smooth sailing either, was it? They lived right through the Spanish Civil War.
That's right, a really turbulent time, 1936 to 1939. And Maria wasn't just passively experiencing it, she actually worked as a nurse.
A nurse, where?
Alongside her husband, Dr. Moret. They were in a field hospital on the nationalist side in a place called Trujillo in Extremadura.
So, right in the thick of it.
Absolutely. Exposed her to the harsh realities of war. There is also a sort of less documented mention that maybe she escaped to France with the kids at some point, but the work in Trujillo seems more concrete.
What a profound experience that must have been.
Yeah.
What about after the war? What did life look like for them then?
Well, after the war ended, the family lived in a few different towns in Catalonia, Girona, Calonge, Sant Antoni, Palol de Revardit. Her husband, Joan, he became quite prominent in the health system during the Franco era.
Oh, really? In what way?
He held leadership roles in a health organization, Obersindical 18 de Julio, it was called. And for a few years in the early 70s, he was the director of the main hospital in Girona, the Hospital Josep Trueta. And Maria, she continued working as a nurse, assisting her husband in his medical work, too.
It sounds like they really built a full life together.
Yeah.
Navigating these huge historical moments, raising a family. That long marriage must have been a source of immense stability for her.
Very likely. And Maria herself, later in life, often talked about how important those connections, family, friends were for longevity. Long, stable partnership, especially one where you've shared intense experiences like the Civil War work, that seems to fit right in with her philosophy.
Then, in 1976, her husband passed away.
Hmm.
And that marked the start of another quite different chapter for her.
Yes, it did. After Joan died, he was 72. Maria lived completely independently for, get this, over 2 decades.
Wow, 2 decades.
Yeah, from when she was 69 until she was about 93. This period really shows her her independence and just her vitality long before she moved into care.
And it wasn't like she just sat at home, was it? I read she did quite a bit of traveling during those years.
Oh, absolutely. She wasn't slowing down much at all. In the 1990s, so when she was in her 80s and even early 90s, she took some pretty major trips.
Where did she go?
Places like Egypt, Italy, the Netherlands, England. I mean, that kind of travel at that age just speaks volumes about her curiosity and her spirit.
It really does. It kind of defies the stereotypes of old age, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What else did she do during that time?
Well, she kept up with her hobbies. She was apparently skilled at sewing, enjoyed reading, and, of course, the piano.
Ah, yes, the piano again.
It was clearly so important to her, and she kept playing it remarkably until she was 108 years old.
108, that's just mind-blowing.
Isn't it? She only stopped, apparently, because, her fingers just didn't have the agility anymore.
Incredible dedication. This whole period, it really does sound like a prime example of active aging. Then, around the year 2000, she made a change. Moved into a residence.
Yes, that's right. Around 2000, when she was about 93, she moved into the Residencia Santa Maria del Tura. It's in Olot, in Girona. And she lived there for the rest of her life, for over 20 years.
And was there a reason she chose that particular place?
Yeah, apparently it wasn't random. She partly chose it because she already had connections there. A friend was living there, and also a cousin of her late husband. So there was a sense of familiarity.
Ah, that makes sense. A bit of a support network already in place. So after those decades of independence, a new phase in a supportive setting. What was life like for her there, especially initially?
Well, at first, she was apparently still quite active within the residence. She had her routines, did some light morning exercises, kept up with the news by reading the paper every day.
And the piano.
And yes, she continued playing the piano there, too, for quite a while, well past her 100th birthday, as we said.
But inevitably, as she got into extreme old age, there must have been some physical changes, some decline.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, living to 117, that takes a toll physically. Her mobility decreased over time, she needed help walking, and eventually she spent most of her days seated. Her eyesight also faded, and that hearing loss she'd had since childhood got worse. Apparently, she ended up using voice-to-text technology to help her communicate.
Voice to text, wow. Adapting again.
Exactly. And in the very last years, there was some memory decline noted as well. It's, the reality of such an advanced age.
It is. But it seems, despite those physical challenges, her mind remained remarkably sharp for an incredibly long time.
That's a really key point in her story. Everyone seems to agree on that. Descriptions like clear head, cognitively sharp come up again and again, right up until near the very end.
On her social life in the residence.
It mainly centered around her family visits, her 2 daughters, other close relatives. She was very aware, apparently, that she'd outlived nearly all her friends, which must be a strange feeling.
Oh, absolutely.
But she often expressed gratitude for her family, saying they were like a cushion against loneliness.
That's lovely. And then there's the whole Twitter thing, which is just amazing for someone born in 1907.
Isn't it wild? Yeah, with help from her family, one of her sons-in-law managed the account. She had this presence on Twitter. The handle was at Maria Branyas 112.
And what did she tweet about?
All sorts. Reflections on life, memories from the past, historical tidbits. And she had that great motto.
Oh, the I'm old but not an idiot one?
That's the one. Soc vela, molt vela, pero no idiota. It just perfectly captured her spirit, didn't it? Using technology like that in her 110s. It's remarkable. Shows she was still engaged.
Totally. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about what might have actually contributed to this incredible longevity. Her habits, her health. What do we know?
Well, diet-wise, her philosophy seemed to be a little bit everything. Moderation and variety were key.
So nothing extreme.
Exactly. Described as simple, frugal, varied. It sounds pretty much like, the principles of a Mediterranean diet, essentially. Balance, not restriction.
And wasn't there one specific food she was famous for eating?
Yes. The natural yogurt. That comes up a lot. She apparently ate it every single day.
Every day.
Yep. She called it her heavenly manna and apparently dismissed fad diets, saying the yogurt was much better. And this daily habit is really interesting when you think about what science later found about her gut microbiome.
We'll definitely circle back to that.
Yeah.
What about other lifestyle things? Any other routines or habits that stand out?
Well, she definitely avoided the obvious bad habits. No smoking, no excessive drinking. And she always insisted she never followed any specific diet, just ate normally, naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond food, she often talked about the importance of order and tranquility in life. Routine seemed important. She did some moderate exercise, like gentle gymnastics in the mornings when she was more mobile in the residence, and enjoyed walks earlier on.
Contact with nature, too, I think.
Yes, that was mentioned. Contact with nature, keeping routines like reading the newspaper. It paints a picture of a life lived with, sort of, a calm consistency.
It does. And her general health over the century. Was she prone to illness?
Remarkably robust, by all accounts. Her daughter specifically said she never went to the hospital, never broke anything, didn't seem to suffer from major illnesses, just the kind of age-related things you'd expect, like joint pain, the sensory loss we mentioned, but fundamentally very healthy for her age.
And then the COVID story, which is just unbelievable.
Right. She caught COVID-19 probably around April or May of 2020. She was 113 years old.
113.
And she recovered.
She did, with apparently mild or maybe even no symptoms. At the time, she became the oldest known survivor of the virus. Doctors who looked at her case even then were pointing towards privileged genetics.
You'd have to think so, wouldn't you? Recovering from COVID at 113, just astonishing. Speaks volumes about her underlying constitution.
Absolutely. And as you hinted, that daily yogurt, it ties back potentially to the science.
Okay, let's go there. Because
Yeah.
the scientific studies she participated in are really fascinating. She was actually keen to be studied, wasn't she? Very much so. She actively collaborated with researchers, particularly Dr. Manel Esteller, who's a big name in epigenetics. That's the study of how lifestyle and environment affect our genes.
Right.
Maria apparently told the scientists, "Study me." She wanted to contribute. So in her final year, they collected samples, blood, saliva, urine, even stool samples for analysis.
And the goal was basically to figure out what made her tick, why she lived so long and so relatively healthily.
Exactly. They were looking for the biological keys to her extreme longevity, hoping to find clues that could maybe help develop treatments for age-related diseases in the future. It was about understanding healthy aging at its most extreme.
So what were the big findings? Let's start with genetics.
Okay, so genetically they found some really interesting things. She had 7 specific genetic variants that are apparently very rare, not previously seen in European populations.
And these variants were linked to good things.
Yes, exactly. They were associated with things like cognitive function, how well the immune system works, lung function, and potentially protection against major diseases like heart disease, cancer, autoimmune disorders.
Wow.
The idea is these rare genes might have given her a kind of protective advantage, helped her organs function better for longer. They also found her lipid metabolism, how her body handles fats, was incredibly efficient. That's also linked to longevity and less risk of dementia.
So her genes were described as, what, Privileged.
Yeah, privileged or welcoming was the kind of language used. It really suggests a strong genetic component to her long life. These rare variants seem pretty significant.
Incredible. So genetics, clearly a big piece of the puzzle. What else did the science uncover? The gut microbiome you mentioned.
Right, her gut microbiome, the community of bacteria living in her intestines, was strikingly different from other elderly people. It actually looked more similar to a child's microbiome.
Really? How so?
She had really high levels of certain types of good bacteria like actinobacteria and bifidobacteria. These tend to decrease as we age, but hers were abundant. And these bacteria are known for helping reduce inflammation and supporting the immune system.
And that could connect back to the yogurt.
Very possibly. It strongly suggests her lifelong yogurt habit might have really helped maintain this beneficial gut environment, which in turn supported her immune system over, well, a very long time.
Fascinating. Okay, genetics, gut health. What about aging at the cellular level? Did they look at that?
They did. They used something called epigenetic clocks. Think of it like measuring the biological wear and tear on her cells compared to her actual age in years.
And what did the clock say?
They suggested her cells were functioning as if they were significantly younger, maybe 10, even up to 17 years younger than her chronological age, based on some markers. Now, her telomeres, those protective caps on chromosomes, they were very short, which you'd expect at 117. But other cellular markers pointed to a much slower biological aging rate overall. Her mitochondria, the energy factories in her cells, were also functioning excellently.
So slower aging inside her body.
It looks that way, yes. And her immune system also showed signs of being really robust, likely boosted by both those good genes and that healthy gut microbiome. They found high levels of proteins good for immune function. It all points to her body just aging more slowly, more efficiently.
It really sounds like this amazing confluence of factors, genetics, gut, cellular health. And her age itself, it was officially verified, wasn't it? Just to be sure.
Oh, yes, absolutely. The Gerontology Research Group, or GRG, they're the official body that validates supercentenarian ages for things like Guinness World Records. They confirmed her age. A researcher actually visited her personally. She was officially added to their list in 2021.
Okay, so the big picture from the science seems to be, it's not just one thing. It's a complex mix.
Exactly. The researchers really emphasized that. It's this interplay between privileged genetics, a beneficial gut microbiome, likely influenced by diet, robust cellular health, and those positive lifestyle factors we talked about. Dr. Esteller suggested maybe a 50-50 split between genetics and lifestyle environment. It's the combination.
And Maria herself had her own take on her secrets to longevity, right?
She did. When asked, she usually put it down to a mix of luck and good genetics, but also lifestyle.
What lifestyle factors did she highlight?
Things like order, tranquility, good connection with family and friends, contact with nature, emotional stability, no worries, no regrets, lots of positivity, and staying away from toxic people.
That last one is interesting, staying away from toxic people.
It is, isn't it? It speaks to protecting your emotional well-being, which she clearly valued highly alongside the physical aspects.
And she seemed quite humble about it all, didn't she? Despite being the oldest person in the world for a time?
Yeah, very much so. She often said she hadn't done anything extraordinary. She'd simply lived, didn't see her great age as some kind of personal achievement. There was a real humility there.
And through her interviews
Yeah.
and that Twitter account, she shared quite a bit of her philosophy, her reflections on life and aging.
Yes, some really thoughtful insights. On change, she said something like, life is change and movement, a continuous adventure full of difficulties, scares, which probably reflected her own long and varied life. On aging itself, she acknowledged the physical decline, but really celebrated keeping her mind sharp. She saw every new year as a gift, a new adventure.
I liked what she said about memory, too.
Oh yes, that was profound. Suggesting the secret includes knowing how to choose what you forget. Letting go, perhaps.
That's powerful. And she really valued those social connections, didn't she?
Immensely. Called strong family ties a cushion that softens loneliness. She felt real sadness, apparently, for older people who didn't have visitors. She also talked fondly about her dogs, missed having them around later on. And she could be quite critical about how society treats the elderly, felt they were sometimes forgotten, especially during the pandemic.
Important perspectives to hear. And her view on death itself seemed remarkably peaceful.
Very serene, yes. She seemed completely accepting. In the months before she passed, she said she felt prepared, called death the expected visit.
That's quite a way to put it.
Isn't it? Her wish was apparently to die peacefully in her sleep without pain. And thankfully, that's how it happened on August 19th, 2024.
And her family shared some of her final thoughts.
They did. A beautiful sentiment. One day that I do not know, but that is very close, this long journey will have ended. Death will find me worn out from having lived so much, but I want it to find me smiling, free, and satisfied. And she asked for no tears.
Wow. It really feels like her philosophy and how she actually lived her life were so closely aligned. That consistency must have helped her well-being.
You have to think so. That sense of order, tranquility, positivity, strong relationships, it seems like living by those values really contributed to her inner peace and perhaps her physical longevity too. Less stress, more contentment.
So looking back at this incredible life, Maria Branyas Morera, what are the main things we should take away?
Well, first, resilience, right?
If
From those early hardships to navigating huge historical changes. Second, the clear importance of social connection and those consistent healthy habits, especially that simple balanced diet.
hmm,
Then there's the science showing that fascinating mix of, lucky genetics working together with environment and lifestyle, her unique
yeah,
biology.
combination.
Exactly. And finally, just her inspiring outlook. That positivity, tranquility, focus on good relationships, acceptance. It's a powerful philosophy for living regardless of age.
It really highlights that longevity isn't about finding one magic bullet. It's much more complex.
Absolutely. It's this intricate dance between nature and nurture, biology and biography. It pushes us beyond simplistic answers.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Maria Branyas Morera's life, maybe something for you, the listener, to think about. How does that balance of genetics and lifestyle feel in your own life? What small, consistent habits could maybe add up over time?
Yeah, and maybe reflecting on her point about toxic people too and the value she placed on emotional calm.
Definitely food for thought. Thank you for joining us on this exploration.
It's been fascinating. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for being with us for this deep dive into the long and really insightful life of Maria Branyas Morera.